September 14th, 2003. A Hells Angels clubhouse outside Phoenix. 30 bikers circle a man kneeling on a concrete floor. One presses a pistol to his temple. Another opens his shirt, checking for a wire. If they find anything, he disappears. They find nothing. They vote him in. They stitch a Hells Angels patch onto his back. He is now a member of the most violent motorcycle gang on Earth. But no one in that room knows he's a federal agent. His real name is Jay Dobbins, ATF Special Agent. For 21 months, he lived inside the Angels. No wire, no extraction plan, memorizing drug deals, weapons caches, and murder confessions. His operation produced 55 arrests, the most successful biker infiltration in American history. The government gave him medals. Then it destroyed him. His protection was revoked. His family's cover was blown. His house was burned with his family inside. When he begged for help, they accused him of setting the fire himself. A federal judge later ruled the ATF targeted him as payback. How does a national hero become his agency's prime suspect? And what secret was the ATF willing to destroy him to protect? Tucson, 1987. Jay Dobbins is 4 days into his career at the ATF. He has not received his first paycheck. He is lying on the floor of a trailer park in South Tucson with a .38 caliber slug lodged in his lung, coughing arterial blood onto linoleum. Fellow agents carry him to a car. The trauma surgeon who cracks his chest open is Dr. Richard Carmona, the same man who 15 years later will be appointed United States Surgeon General. Dobbins wakes with a drainage tube between his ribs and tells his supervisor he did not sign on to sit behind a desk. Then he rips the tube out and returns to duty. 4 days. 4 days is how long it took for Jay Dobbins to learn that the job he signed up for could kill him and that death was preferable to irrelevance. 2 years later, Chicago. Dobbins is working an undercover gang unit when an arrestee floors a sedan into his legs and launches him across the hood. Both kneecaps shatter. Dobbins lands on asphalt, spine flat, and vision tunneling. The car accelerates away. From his back, he draws his sidearm and fires at the fleeing vehicle. The following week, he limps into the field office on metal leg braces and demands a new assignment. This pattern becomes the blueprint. Over the next decade, Dobbins racks up more than 500 undercover operations: gun stings, drug buys, prison riots, biker bar infiltrations. Every wound adds credibility. Criminals across the Southwest begin whispering a nickname: Jaybird, the agent who cannot die. The agent who bleeds but never quits. The man whose scars are proof he belongs in rooms where proof is measured in damage absorbed, not credentials displayed. He does not just collect scars. He weaponizes them. A limp from the Chicago incident becomes proof he has been through street wars. The bullet wound in his chest becomes a story he tells in dim bars to men who measure trust by the damage you have absorbed. In a world where resumes are written in scar tissue, Jay Dobbins has a doctoral degree. A few years in, Dobbins and a partner walk into a Sons of Silence clubhouse wearing fabricated gang colors. The door locks behind them. A 6'9" enforcer lunges for the patch on Dobbins' jacket. Furniture splinters. For 15 minutes, they trade fists, elbows, and broken chair legs until Dobbins drives the man to the floor and knocks him unconscious. He stands over the body, bleeding from his eyebrow, and checks his own jacket. The fake patch is still stitched in place. Every scar Jaybird collects buys him deeper access to a world where violence is currency. But what is that currency costing the man underneath the alias? And how much of Jay Dobbins is left when Jaybird finally takes the jacket off? At home, the ledger is already overdrawn. His wife Gwen and their 2 young children learn to read his face, the way a prisoner reads a guard, looking for signs of danger. When he is home at all, he is still Jaybird, coiled, aggressive, somewhere else. His son and daughter stop asking when Dad will play catch. Years later, Dobbins will admit the blunt truth: he was entirely selfish, and his family was afraid of him. Then, in 2001, the prize assignment arrives. A shootout between Hells Angels and Mongols at a casino in Laughlin, Nevada, leaves 3 bikers dead and 12 wounded on a crowded casino floor. The ATF decides to do something no federal agency has ever accomplished: place an undercover agent inside the Hells Angels at full patch level. They need someone reckless enough to volunteer and skilled enough to survive. They pick Jaybird, but there is a catch that makes the mission twice as dangerous. To reach the Angels, Dobbins first has to infiltrate a feeder gang, the Solo Angeles, a Mexican outlaw club with direct ties to the mother chapter. It is an infiltration inside an infiltration, two locked doors between him and the exit. If a single biker in either organization suspects the truth, J. Dobbins disappears, and no recovery team will know where to start looking. So what does a man with a shattered family, a body held together by surgical steel, and an addiction to adrenaline do when the government asks him to become a killer? September 2001. The operation is codenamed Black Biscuit. J. Dobbins erases himself and becomes Jay Davis, a gun runner and freelance enforcer out of Las Vegas with a taste for violence and no verifiable past. He checks into a peeling motel in Tijuana, hangs crime scene photographs on the walls, props a baseball bat in the corner, and stashes ballistic vests in the closet. Then he starts performing. Under darkness, he slashes tires on cars belonging to suspected informants. He stages confrontations in parking lots, flipping tables at the right moment, making sure the right people see him lose his temper. Word filters through Tijuana's biker circuit Jay Davis is trouble, and trouble is useful. The Hells Angels dispatch private investigators to vet him, 3 separate background checks over 6 months. Each time, the ATF's cover team holds. Each time, Dobbins exhales a little slower. But each successful check also raises the stakes. The Angels do not investigate a man 3 times unless they are close to either trusting him completely or killing him. But one senior Angel refuses to be convinced. Chico Mora, a 300-pound veteran enforcer, watches Davis with the flat patience of a man who has buried informants before. Dobbins avoids him, never pressing, never slipping. Paranoia becomes his roommate. At the Skull Valley clubhouse one night, an Angel presses a pistol barrel to Dobbins' temple and orders him to strip. The club suspects every newcomer of wearing a wire. Dobbins unbuttons his shirt 1 button at a time, the muzzle dragging across his skin, until they find nothing and shove him aside. His heart rate does not return to normal for 2 hours. Then comes the moment the Angels demand proof that Jay Davis has been killed. The ATF answers with theater. In the desert outside Phoenix, federal agents stage an execution. A kneeling figure, a rigged jacket soaked in pig's blood, cow brains scattered on the sand, shell casings placed for the camera. Dobbins lights a cigarette, fires a round, and agents photograph the aftermath from 3 angles. That night, he walks into the Hells Angels clubhouse with photos in hand. The room changes, applause, raised beer mugs. By midnight, the members vote. They stitch a patch onto J. Dobbins' back Skull Valley Hells Angels, full colors. He is, at that moment, the only federal agent in history to hold that rank. The thrill lasts about 4 seconds before the dread moves in. There is no extraction protocol for this depth. He is deeper inside than anyone at the ATF planned, and every day he stays increases the odds that the next background check will crack the cover. For 21 months, he rides with the Angels, attending church meetings, witnessing drug transactions, cataloging weapons caches, and mapping the club's hierarchy across 3 states. He rarely wears a wire. Almost everything rests on his memory and his nerves. Every Friday night ride could be his last if a single Angel runs his plate, checks a database, or simply decides that Jay Davis asks too many questions. The strain compounds. He loses weight. His hands shake when he is alone. The adrenaline that once felt like fuel now feels like poison dripping through his veins at a rate he cannot control. Meanwhile, at home, his 8-year-old son hands him a smooth stone during one of his rare visits and says 4 words that cut deeper than any bullet. When you feel scared, hold this. Dobbins will later call that the lowest moment of his life. He is winning the war against the angels and losing every other war that matters. So what did 2 years of sacrifice actually buy the United States government? 55 arrests, including senior Hells Angels, Aryan Brotherhood soldiers, and MS-13 operatives. Enough evidence to fill a federal warehouse. Medals, commendations, handshakes from the Attorney General's office. On paper, Operation Black Biscuit is the most successful outlaw motorcycle gang case in ATF history. Off paper, the story is about to collapse, and it will take J. Dobyns down with it. How does a case with 55 arrests turn into the Bureau's biggest liability? And what happens to the one man who knows where every skeleton is buried? The big case crumbles almost immediately. Defense attorneys tear into the evidence. Charges against key angels are reduced or dismissed outright. A federal judge scolds prosecutors for mishandling witness testimony. The Hells Angels lawyers hold press conferences, painting the ATF as incompetent cowboys who fabricated evidence and entrapped innocent bikers. News cycles that once celebrated the takedown now question its legitimacy. For the ATF, Black Biscuit transforms overnight from a trophy into an embarrassment, and embarrassments need someone to blame. The same supervisors who authorized every stage of the operation now distance themselves from it, rewriting internal memos to suggest Dobyns went rogue. Meanwhile, the death threats multiply. With J. Dobyns' real identity now exposed in open court, every organization he infiltrated knows exactly who betrayed them. The FBI intercepts Aryan Brotherhood hitmen discussing how to snap Dobyns' neck. Gang members plot to burn him alive in his bedroom. MS-13 operatives laughing about the bounty. The threats are not abstract. They are specific. License plates, street addresses, the names of his children's schools. Intelligence analysts flag chatter about surveillance teams tracking his daily routes, cataloging his patterns the way Dobyns once cataloged theirs. In Phoenix, federal intelligence analysts log a $50,000 contract on Jay's head, signed by representatives of all three organizations. His phone rings with familiar voices. "We know where you sleep." Dobyns does what any agent would do. He begs the ATF and the Department of Justice for protection. He files formal requests. He calls supervisors. He writes memos. He reminds them of the promises made before he went undercover, that the Bureau would protect his family no matter what. What comes back is silence, then something worse. Emails go unanswered. Phone calls are routed to voicemail. Meetings are canceled without explanation. In the spring of 2008, without warning or documented justification, the Bureau strips the Dobyns family of every layer of security. The fake identities the government built for Gwen and the children are deleted. School enrollment records, church memberships, utility accounts, all reverted to their real names overnight. Internal reviews will later confirm there was no valid operational reason for the exposure. The agency that sent J. Dobyns into a lion's den has now opened the cage door and shoved his family inside. Why would the ATF abandon the agent whose mission it publicly celebrated? The answer lives in a lawsuit, and in what that lawsuit threatened to drag into daylight. With no other option, Dobyns goes public. He sues the United States government, alleging that the ATF knowingly endangered his family by revoking their protection without cause. News cameras find him on courthouse steps. Reporters call him a whistleblower. Inside ATF headquarters, the word they use is different liability. Behind closed doors, supervisors who once approved his commendations now draft memos labeling him unstable. Former colleagues stop returning his calls. Police details assigned to his neighborhood quietly rotate elsewhere. The message is unmistakable. J. Dobyns is no longer one of us. By the summer of 2008, J. Dobyns occupies a position with no training manual covers. A man with 3 active death contracts on his head, no government protection, a pending federal lawsuit against his own employer, and a family exposed under their real names in the same city where bikers know his address. He sleeps in shifts. He checks the locks hourly. He drives different routes to the grocery store. He keeps a loaded weapon within arm's reach at all times, not because of criminals, but because the institution that is supposed to protect him has made clear it will not. And every single night, he waits for the sound that will confirm his worst prediction. On August 10th, 2008, at 2:17 in the morning, that sound arrives. Flames devour his house. Gwen carries the children out through a hallway filling with smoke. By dawn, ATF agents are sifting the ashes, not looking for the bikers who want him dead, but building a case that Jay Dobbins set the fire himself. The man who gave the government its greatest undercover victory is now its prime suspect. And the reason the ATF needs him to be found guilty has nothing to do with arson. It has everything to do with a scandal the Bureau cannot afford to let him expose. What scandal could be worth destroying a decorated agent? And how far up the chain does the order go? And when the people protecting the Bureau's secrets overlap with the people destroying its heroes, what does that say about who the Bureau actually serves? The wind tears through Tucson's empty streets that August night. Inside Jay's house, wooden beams split and curl. Smoke blackens the ceiling before the first flame breaks through. Gwen jolts awake choking, grabs the children from their beds and sprints down a hallway already warping with heat. She clears the front door as a wall collapses behind her. The family is alive by a margin measured in seconds. By the time fire trucks arrive, the structure is beyond saving. Flames punch through the roof. The house Jay Dobbins defended with his body for 2 decades collapses into its own foundation. By dawn, ATF investigators comb the wreckage. They log a cut fuel can nozzle. They photograph unusual burn patterns on the floor. They catalog a scorched ledger. At the field office under fluorescent lights, an arson investigator pushes the evidence across a metal table and leans close. "Agent Dobbins, we believe you burned your own house." Dobbins feels the oxygen leave the room. He has been shot, run over, beaten unconscious, stripped at gunpoint by Hell's Angels, and targeted for assassination by 3 criminal organizations, and none of it prepared him for this sentence from a man wearing the same badge. He answers the only way he can, "I risked my life for this Bureau. Why would I destroy my home?" But the investigators press on. An unexplained withdrawal here, a disputed insurance detail there, anything that fits the narrative they need. Years later, a federal judge will write the line that explains everything. In his 54-page ruling, Judge Francis Allegra of the U.S. Court of Federal Claims states that the ATF investigators knew he was not responsible for the fire and still allowed him to be treated as a suspect as a form of payback. Payback, the judge's word, not Dobbins's, for the lawsuit that embarrassed the Bureau. Payback for going public. Payback for refusing to disappear quietly. Payback for being the kind of man who would rather burn his career than his principles. But the arson investigation is a sideshow compared to what the ATF is actually protecting. In 2011, the scandal that Jay Dobbins' lawsuit threatened to expose detonates on its own. 2 federal agents, Border Patrol agent Brian Terry and ICE agent Jaime Zapata, are killed with weapons traced to Operation Fast and Furious, the ATF gunwalking program that allowed thousands of firearms to flow into Mexican cartel hands. The program was designed to track weapons to cartel leaders. Instead, it armed them. And when agents died from those weapons, the Bureau's instinct was not accountability, it was containment. Congressional hearings follow, Inspector General reports follow. And buried in the org charts, the supervisors who managed the Fast and Furious cover-up overlap with the officials who ordered the dismantling of Jay Dobbins' protection and directed the arson investigation against him. The connection clicks into place like a round chambering. Jay Dobbins was not punished for setting a fire. He was punished for being a man who sued, who talked to reporters, who refused to stay silent. At the exact moment when silence was the only thing protecting the Bureau's most catastrophic secret. His destruction was not personal. It was institutional self-preservation dressed in the language of an arson investigation. And the people executing it had already proven they were willing to let 2,000 firearms reach cartel kill teams rather than admit a mistake. What was one more ruined agent against that calculus? Dobbins watches his career reduced to ashes that mirror his house. His badges are gone. His name circulates in internal reports under the word unstable. Somewhere in Phoenix, the bikers who once feared Jaybird learn through their own channels that the ATF has turned on him. The irony is bitter enough to taste the criminals J. Dobbins infiltrated now have a common enemy with the agency that sent him in. But J. Dobbins still has one weapon the ATF cannot confiscate: the documented record of everything they did, 641 pages of it, preserved in federal filing systems the Bureau cannot reach. And he intends to put every page in front of a judge. Can one man, stripped of his badge, his protection, and his career, beat the full legal machinery of the United States government in open court? A courtroom in the U.S. Court of Federal Claims, Washington, D.C. At one table, J. Dobbins in a gray suit, his attorney, and a single paralegal. At the other 6 Department of Justice lawyers and 2 paralegals. The imbalance tells you everything about what is at stake. Dobbins stands and methodically disassembles the Bureau's version of events. He presents transcripts of internal ATF communications in which colleagues discuss killing him. He submits 641 pages of documentation proving that every promise of protection was made and broken. He enters into evidence photographs of his burned house, medical records from surgeries dating back to 1987, and a small, smooth stone his son once pressed into his hand. The government's attorneys counter with everything they can dredge: old social media posts, questions about his mental state. None of it lands. Dobbins remains composed on the stand. After weeks of testimony, Judge Francis Allegra issues his ruling in 2014. 54 pages. He opens with a quotation from Othello, the passage about a man whose good name is stolen. Allegra calls the ATF's conduct misfeasance and declares that the government systematically violated its duty of care to J. Dobbins and his family. He writes that ATF investigators knew Dobbins was not responsible for the fire and targeted him anyway as retribution. He awards $173,000 in damages. For a brief window, it feels like vindication. Then the Department of Justice appeals. During the appeals process, a bombshell detonates. Judge Allegra discovers that DOJ attorneys engaged in misconduct during the original trial, instructing ATF officials not to investigate the actual cause of the fire, because doing so would damage the government's legal position. Allegra issues a second ruling declaring fraud upon the court, voids the original verdict entirely, and removes the offending attorneys from the case. But institutional machinery grinds slowly and forgives its own. In 2019, the Federal Circuit Court of Appeals rules against Dobbins. No damages, no official victory. The Supreme Court declines to hear the case. Legally, the man who infiltrated the Hells Angels loses. Except he does not lose everything. Judge Allegra's 54-page opinion is a public document. The Inspector General's reports are public documents. The congressional testimony is public record. The fraud on the court finding is case law. None of it can be redacted, reclassified, or made to disappear. The ATF can strip J. Dobbins of his badge, his protection, and his pension. It cannot strip the judicial record that names what was done to him. Dobbins walks out of the courthouse into a Washington evening. He does not have a check. He does not have a badge. He does not have a pension or a career. He has a smooth stone in his pocket and a ruling that says, in the permanent language of federal law, that his government betrayed him. J. Dobbins did something no other federal agent has done before or since. He earned the full colors of the Hells Angels, survived assassination contracts from 3 criminal organizations, and gathered enough evidence to put 55 people in handcuffs. The only thing he could not survive was the institution he served. The ATF decided that his silence was worth more than his sacrifice, more than the 21 months he spent sleeping in biker clubhouses, more than the bullet scar on his chest, more than the children who grew up afraid of their own father. He refused to be silent. That refusal cost him everything the government could take. It also preserved the one thing the government could not record of what happened. If you want to see what happens when the same government protects a con man who nearly triggered World War III, watch the video on screen now. A casino surveillance tech with a gambling problem convinced the CIA his software could decode Al-Qaeda messages hidden in Al Jazeera broadcasts. got top-secret access, nearly shut down international flights, and triggered debates about shooting down passenger planes. French intelligence proved his intel was impossible, but instead of prosecuting him, the government buried the scandal and let him walk free. Click here.